We're able to bring you this history video thanks to our latest sponsor, March of Empires, the medieval strategy game where you wage war on other leaders to conquer their territory. Fortify your castle, build a thriving kingdom, and form an army to dominate the realm. Forge alliances and create cunning strategies to take out your opponents in this tactical battle game as you create your own legacy as a Northern Tsar, Desert Sultan, or a Highland King. Take advantage of brand new quest lines, special holiday events, and other Christmas-themed content as we celebrate the upcoming holidays with the Call of War update. Check out the link below and download now to get started on your own in March of Empires. Get yourself a Christmas gift from the special holiday event shop. Enjoy 5 days free Paragon Pass. Experience the full benefits of 7 days free deluxe VIP and event passes, and experience the festive holiday Imperial, Royal, and Common lotteries. Defense of Fort Vaux, June 1st through the 7th, 1916. World War I. The Battle of Verdun, the longest battle of World War I, lasted from February 21st, 1916 until December 18th, 1916, and caused over 700,000 casualties. In early June 1916, some of the fiercest fighting of the Battle of Verdun would happen in the dark corridors and casemates of Fort Vaux. This fortress was the smallest of the 44 fortifications around the city of Verdun. Nevertheless, its defenders' stubborn resistance to continuous German attacks served as an example of the French determination to defend Verdun at all costs. Verdun was one of France's most important defensive positions, especially during the First World War. After the French defeat at the Franco-Prussian War in 1871 and the loss of parts of Alsace and Lorraine, the defense of Verdun became of vital significance. In 5 phases between 1874 and 1914, the French built a total of 44 forts around the city of Verdun. Fort Vaux was built as a part of the New Exterior Line project as a response from the threat of the Triple Alliance between Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy. The fort was constructed in 1881 as a trapezoid light fortification. It was supposed to serve as an alarm bell in case of an attack. The rapid development of artillery in the late 19th century, however, made traditional stone-built forts obsolete. All the Verdun forts had to therefore be improved and modernized, including Fort Vaux, which became a moderately sized fort with accommodation for 250 men. The fortress was modernized on 3 occasions. The first one came after the torpedo shell crisis and lasted from 1888 until 1895. The modernization continued in periods between 1904 and 1906, and finally prior to the First World War from 1910 to 1912. The final cost of the modernization was 2.9 million gold francs. The most important feature introduced was the reinforced concrete installed on the roofs and walls most exposed to shell fire directly over the old masonry facades. The thickness of the walls varied from 4 feet or 1.2 meters for tunnels to 6.6 feet or 2 meters for the exposed walls. These concrete walls were able to withstand the impact of a 270mm shell. The trapezoid fort measured 492 feet or 150 meters from north to south, and 656 feet or 200 meters from east to west, and was surrounded by a deep, dry ditch. The ditches were protected by caponniers, defensive bastions on the fort's corners, featuring loopholes from which the French defenders would fire against the enemy. On top of the fort, there was a retractable steel turret with 2 short-barreled 75mm guns. The turret was able to rotate 360 degrees and served to cover all approaches to the fort. The gun turrets were connected by speaking tubes to an observation post protected by a heavy steel dome. Additional firepower was provided by 2 Bourge casemates on the southeastern and southwestern corners of the fort. Placed behind the ditch, these 2 casemates were protected with earth that covered the barracks and roof made of thick concrete. Each Bourge casemate housed 2 quick-firing 75mm field guns. Their role was to protect the fort's flanks and to provide flanking fire for neighboring forts. However, these guns were removed so they could be used on the front line before the defense of Fort Vaux had begun. The inside of the fort housed the barracks with large rooms for soldiers, a commandant's quarters, a signaling station, storerooms, magazines, a first aid post, and latrines. The barracks were connected to other elements of the fort via tunnels. 2 underground cisterns with a capacity of 300,000 liters provided the water supply from nearby springs. Another source of water was rainwater, which was filtered through the earth and then flowed to the cisterns. Water facilities were of the utmost importance to the defense of the fort. Its consumption was strictly controlled. Each soldier had the allowance of 5 liters per day, which he used for drinking, maintaining hygiene, and washing clothes. It wasn't only the lack of basic necessities that made the lives of the French troops strenuous, as the constant bombardment from the heavy German 305mm and 420mm guns caused enormous stress. Once the French garrison of Fort Vaux was attacked by the Germans and cut off from the rest of the battle, their situation turned into 5 days of brutal fighting in inhuman conditions. The attack on Fort Vaux showed no importance for the final outcome of the Battle of Verdun, yet the bravery of the fort defenders would make the battle famous. On February 25, 1916, the key of the right bank defenses, Fort Douaumont, fell into German hands. The next day, French General Hare, the military governor of Verdun, ordered Fort Vaux to be destroyed. The French plan was, however, prevented by the Germans, whose bombardment destroyed the explosive charges before they were armed. The change of events came when General Henri-Phillipe Pétain replaced Hare. Pétain gave the order for any charges left to be removed and to defend each fort at all costs. On June 1st, 2 battalions of the German 50th Infantry Division commenced the attack on Fort Vaux. At that point, Fort Vaux was devastated by 3 months of severe German bombardment. The German shells destroyed the top 75mm gun turret, so the fort relied only on its machine guns to defend itself. The 420mm shells destroyed the concrete layer of the fort in several spots, exposing its interior tunnels. Worst of all was that the artillery shells damaged the internal galleries and caused the leaking of the water cisterns. The French garrison, under the command of Major Sylvain-Eugene Raynal, counted 600 men, even though the fort was designed for just 250 soldiers. The increase of men was the result of a withdrawal of French soldiers who had rushed into the safety of the fort. The first targets of the German assault were the northern casemates. German pioneers crawled all the way to the fort's ditches and attacked the casemates with grenades. The German pioneers, while suffering heavy casualties from Fort Vaux's machine guns and a 155mm gun from the nearby Fort Moulainville, did manage to conquer both the northeastern and northwestern casemates and entered the tunnels leading to the main part of the fort. Inside the tunnels, they bumped into sandbag obstacles with machine guns the French installed to prevent them from advancing further inside. On the following day, June 2nd, the Germans had the entire fort encircled. Major Raynal and his men were trapped, but continued to resist the Germans, who didn't make any progress inside the dark tunnels of the fort. Pressed by German infantry from all sides, the French soldiers were desperate for help. Major Raynal sent a messenger pigeon asking for a counterattack, which followed on June 4th. Soldiers of the French 124th Division reached the western edge of the front, but were repelled by the Dusseldorf Fusiliers, and the attempt was abandoned. On that same day, the Germans returned to the fort with flamethrowers, pouring fire through every open hole. The entire fort was filled with thick black smoke. In the tunnels leading from the captured casemates, the French defenders withdrew from their machine gun positions, but only while the flamethrowers were active. As soon as the fire stopped, they were returned to their positions to fight off the Germans. By this point, Major Raynal received the news that the fort had almost no water, and the gauge of the cisterns had been faulty. He was forced to change the distribution of water from 1 liter per man to 1/8 of a liter. Additionally, he was forced to evacuate some 300 non-combat personnel and wounded from inside the fort because he couldn't spare them any water. This evacuation was attempted in the dead of night, and only about 1/3 of them were able to survive and reach the French lines. The German attacks continued on the 5th day. This time they tried to penetrate the tunnels by digging down from the top of the fort, but were once again driven off by guns from neighboring fortifications. Major Raynal had signaled the nearby Fort Souville, which bombarded the surface of the fort with artillery to take out the Germans on the roof. The Germans responded by shelling Raynal's signaling station, meaning that he was totally cut off from the outside world. The flamethrower attack attempted by the Germans on the southwestern Bourges casemate had failed. At that point, they were close to abandoning the attack, as the number of their casualties grew while no progress was being made. The other side, meanwhile, was faring no better. For the French, the last drops of water ran out from the damaged cisterns on June 6th. On the same day, another French attempt to relieve the defenders failed. In the fort, filled with thirsty and exhausted soldiers, of which many were ill or injured, morale had collapsed. On June 7th, as the Germans began to drop another barrage of shells, Major Raynal decided it was time to surrender. The Battle of Fort Vaux ended with a German flag waving on top of the severely damaged fortification. The price for the victory was paid by the Germans, with 2,742 casualties. At the same time, the brave French defenders had only 100 casualties, of which only 20 were killed. Major Raynal was the last to leave the fort after he arranged the transport of the wounded and the burials of the soldiers killed in action. When he was taken to the German headquarters, General von Engelbrechten paid him the greatest respect for bravery, assuring him that he should feel no shame. Major Raynal, a proud Frenchman, responded that the Germans had nothing to do with the fall of Fort Vaux. It was the thirst that defeated them.